Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. Pressure's on to finish talks on President Biden's top priority, the infrastructure bill. The bipartisan group still hitting roadblocks. Anxious Democrats face a timeline to act. President Biden says a serious cyber attack could lead the U.S. into a real war with another major power. He says countries like Russia and China are possible mortal competitors to the U.S. The Biden administration is now ordering immigration judges to stop using the term illegal aliens to describe illegal immigrants. We'll tell you what terms they're supposed to use instead. Lacking digital security is a widespread problem these days. We bring you a trick from an expert to help you keep the data on your phone safe. Biles withdraws from another Olympics gymnastics competition. She pulled out of the individual all-around competition after withdrawing from the team finals earlier. The push is on to finish the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The Senate Democrat leader says they'll work through the weekend if that's what it takes. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
Senators and the White House were locked in negotiations Tuesday to salvage a bipartisan infrastructure deal. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said they're making good progress.
If an agreement can be reached, and I'm very optimistic and hopeful it will be, senators should prepare to work through the weekend in order to finish the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
The bipartisan group blew past a Monday deadline for the $1.2 trillion package, and pressure's mounting to wrap up talks.
I salute the bipartisan group, but it's time to close the deal. I hope they can get it done soon. As Senator Schumer has said, we're going to stay until it is done.
Some roadblocks include how much to spend on public transit and water infrastructure, and whether to use virus relief funds to help pay for it. Also on Tuesday, President Biden met with the lead Democrat negotiator, Senator Kristen Sinema.
They are very much aligned on the path forward. Both feel optimistic about the path forward.
On infrastructure, the White House wants a bipartisan agreement for this first phase before Democrats go it alone for a broader $3.5 trillion spending plan. And Republican Senator Joni Ernst's latest wasteful spending award goes to the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA. Is giving over $200 million to extend a subway line in House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's district from San Francisco to Silicon Valley. Ernst writes, this expansion will cost more than $1 billion per mile to construct and is already billions over budget and years behind schedule. She says part of it would duplicate an existing rail service, and it's projected to lose up to $200 million annually over the next decade. Ernst told reporters she's introducing legislation that would bar the federal government from funding any transportation project that's $1 billion or more over budget and projected to lose money each year for a decade into the future. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
President Biden tells intelligence officials that a cyber attack could cause the U.S. to go to war with another major power. He says ransomware attacks are starting to cause more damage in the real world, and U.S. intelligence agencies need to keep a watchful eye on countries like Russia and China. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has the story.
On a visit to U.S. intelligence agencies Tuesday, President Biden says a cyber attack is the most likely reason the U.S. would go to war with another major power.
If we end up in a war, a real shooting war with a major power, it's going to be as a consequence of a cyber breach.
He says ransomware attacks are causing more damage in the real world now, and their threat is growing. And he says Russia is a serious cybersecurity threat to the U.S., partly because they have a weak economy.
When I was with Mr. Putin, who has a real problem, he's sitting on top of an economy that has nuclear weapons and oil wells and nothing else.
He says that makes Putin very dangerous. Biden says the Chinese regime is another major threat. He called them a possible mortal competitor to the U.S. in the future.
He is deadly earnest about becoming the most powerful military force in the world, as well as the largest and most prominent economy in the world.
Biden says the Chinese regime has a real plan, and the U.S. needs to keep pace. He says the U.S. needs to balance cooperating with Russia and the Chinese regime on some issues, while the U.S. intelligence community keeps a watchful eye on their ultimate objectives. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
A top FBI official on Tuesday told lawmakers that Congress should not make it illegal to pay ransom to cybercriminals.
If we ban ransom payments, now you're putting U.S. companies in a position to face yet another extortion, which is being blackmailed for paying the ransom and not sharing that with authorities. And so it's a really complicated conversation, but it's our position that banning ransom payments is not the road to go down.
The advice came during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on ransomware. This comes in the wake of several high-profile ransomware attacks that impacted various industries as well as critical U.S. infrastructure. One of the most disruptive recent attacks was the one earlier this year that shut down the Colonial Pipeline, America's largest fuel pipeline. The closure led to panic buying, which resulted in gas shortages. In that case and several others, the impacted companies decided to pay the ransom in order to get their data back and their operations up and running. The National Security Agency is offering a simple but effective approach to prevent hackers from breaking into your mobile device. That is, step 1, turn off your phone, and step 2, turn it back on. Here's more.
You can stop hacking by simply rebooting your phone every week. So said the National Security Agency's Best Practices Guide for Mobile Device Security. According to an expert from the NSA's Cybersecurity Directorate, the simple action makes even the most sophisticated hackers work harder to maintain access.
A lot of modern cyber attacks are a chain of 2, 3, or even more vulnerabilities in a row that have to be successfully exploited. And if you can reset the adversary back to the beginning of that chain and force them to go through the whole thing again, that's also an aspect of incurring cost on them.
Always in arm's reach and rarely turned off, cell phones have become top targets for hackers. They're able to steal personal data, secretly turn on cameras and microphones, and even track the user's locations.
Your phone knows where it is on the earth, and it will, under many circumstances, share that information with external parties.
Usually, once the hacker gains access to the system, they'll look for a way to stay in by installing malicious software into the device's root file system. But that's getting more difficult as phone manufacturers like Apple and Google add in strong security features to block malware from core operating systems.
Just be careful which apps you install. Right? Install the ones you need. When you're done with one, you're not going to use it anymore. Uninstall it, because by doing that, you keep your attack surface more bounded.
The NSA's guide also acknowledges that rebooting only works some of the time and offers an even simpler solution. Don't carry the phone with you.
33-year-old Daniel Hale was sentenced to nearly 4 years in jail for obtaining classified information and leaking it to a reporter. He pleaded guilty back in March. Hale was charged with retention and transmission of national defense information. He leaked documents about drone strikes to a reporter. Hale was a member of the U.S. Air Force and assigned to the National Security Agency at the time. Fugitive leaker Edward Snowden called Hale a great American whistleblower and said Hale revealed that 90% of people killed by U.S. drone strikes are bystanders. But the judge told Hale that he could have taken other actions to raise concerns. Prosecutors argued that Hale knew the documents he shared risked causing serious damage to national security and that they were later found among ISIS materials. And in other news surrounding immigration, the Biden administration is ordering immigration judges to stop describing illegal immigrants as illegal aliens. This, as Texas police learn COVID-positive illegal immigrants are being sent to local hotels. One of the top immigration officials who Biden appointed issued a memo last week to immigration judges. It changes the wording used to describe illegal immigrants. Now, the judges are to stop using the term illegal aliens and instead use terms like undocumented citizen and undocumented individual. The memo's footnotes also reference the Associated Press style guide, which bans the use of terms like illegal alien, illegal, and undocumented. The memo notes that the only exception is when a judge is quoting a statute regulation or court order. And over in Texas, police reportedly learned that migrants who tested positive for COVID were sent to local hotels. This is apparently after encountering migrants who are making other patrons uncomfortable by not following health guidelines and sneezing at a Whataburger restaurant. According to Fox News, South Texas officials learned federal authorities were releasing these illegal immigrants to a Catholic charity. The charity then booked hotel rooms for them but didn't notify officials. What's more, thousands of migrants crossing the Rio Grande River have caused new ports of entry to emerge to receive them. They're called proxy points of entry. They consist of tents and water brought in by Border Patrol and state troopers at the border fence. Migrants reach Acuña, Mexico by bus. Then they discard their passports because they've been told it's harder to be deported without ID. Then they cross the river and head to the border fence and wait for Border Patrol. Additionally, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has called in his state's National Guard to help make arrests at the border. Guardsmen will help DPS arrest people who face state charges. Previously, Abbott had said that illegal immigrants who trespass or who smuggle or traffic drugs will be arrested. President Biden says his administration could mandate that all federal workers get the vaccine for the CCP virus. He blamed unvaccinated citizens for fueling the pandemic.
Will you require all federal employees to get vaccinated?
That's under consideration right now.
Biden was also asked if the government's new guidance that the vaccinated should continue to wear masks was confusing. He responded that the unvaccinated are the ones sowing confusion. Biden said the world would be different if everyone got vaccinated. The Department of Veterans Affairs this week became the first federal agency to impose a vaccine mandate. The federal government has also shifted from appealing to Americans to get vaccinated to now blaming those who haven't received a vaccine for the state of the pandemic. Opponents of mandatory vaccination say that all 3 vaccines in the U.S. still lack full approval and safety trials are ongoing, so vaccine makers have no liability for injury or death. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Tuesday recommended that fully vaccinated Americans wear masks indoors in at least some instances. It marks a reversal of the agency's announcement in May that prompted millions of vaccinated people to shed their face coverings.
Today, we have new science related to the Delta variant that requires us to update the guidance regarding what you can do when you are fully vaccinated.
In a major reversal on Tuesday, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, in a telephone news briefing, said the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that she leads now recommends that Americans who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 should go back to wearing masks in indoor public places in regions where the virus and especially the Delta variant are spreading rapidly.
In areas with substantial and high transmission, CDC recommends fully vaccinated people wear masks in public indoor settings to help prevent the spread of the Delta variant and protect others.
Behind the course correction, new troubling data showing that vaccinated people who contract the Delta variant in so-called breakthrough cases can spread the virus.
Information on the Delta variant from several states and other countries indicates that in rare occasions, some vaccinated people infected with the Delta variant after vaccination may be contagious and spread the virus to others.
The revised guidance is a setback for the Biden administration after Walensky happily announced in May that vaccinated Americans could shed their masks in most places,
indoor and outdoor activities,
to allow life to begin to return to normal. The CDC also recommended that all students and teachers at kindergarten through 12th grade schools wear masks regardless of vaccination status. The CDC added that children should return to full-time in-person learning in the fall with proper prevention strategies.
Brian Monahan, the attending physician for the U.S. House, is reinstating mask wearing in the Capitol building. He sent out new guidance Tuesday night requiring well-fitted medical-grade masks be worn by everyone inside the House chamber. Monahan said it comes in light of the new CDC guidance as the Delta variant spreads. The CDC's new mask guidance makes a sharp turnaround. So what do people think of the agency's new recommendation? In New York City's Times Square, passers-by voiced their support.
In New York's Times Square, passers-by seemed supportive of the CDC's new mask recommendation. Mitzi Coffin was visiting from Texas with her family. She called the decision a wise one.
As a person with autoimmune disease, I think that I should probably wear a mask indoors now. So with the new variant, with the new Delta variant out there, I think it is probably wise that I do wear a mask indoors. I'm not doing it currently, but I do think that I should wear a mask.
One New York resident said he'd be willing to wear a mask indoors.
Well, it would depend on the ventilation in the venue indoors. If there's no ventilation, then wear a mask.
Another local described the new guidance as a step forward because rates are going up again.
We don't want to all get into lockdown again because some people don't want to get vaccinated. If you're vaccinated, then okay, if you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear your mask. But if you're not and your rates are getting higher, like I suggest either get vaccinated or continue to wear your mask because you can't win both ways and we all want life to go back to how it was prior to the pandemic.
Others also came out in favor of the recommendation.
I think it's a good idea because it's better safe than sorry. You know, you never know what happens, so I think it's a good idea.
I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, with the Delta variant, it seems like people who who are vaccinated are getting breakthrough cases and stuff. So, yeah, absolutely, I think it's the right thing to put masks back on.
The United States now leads the world in the daily average number of new infections, accounting for 1 in every 9 cases reported worldwide each day.
Simone Biles withdrew from the individual all-around competition today. It comes a day after shocking the world by pulling out of the team all-around event in the Tokyo Olympics.
Reigning champion Simone Biles has withdrawn from the individual all-around gymnastics competition at the Tokyo Olympics, USA Gymnastics said on Wednesday. That comes shortly after Biles' sponsor, Athleta, rallied behind the American gymnast after she dropped out of the women's team final on Tuesday. Biles dropped out of the team final Tuesday night after a wobbly first vault. USA Gymnastics initially said she had withdrawn from an unspecified medical issue, but Biles later clarified that she needed to focus on her mental health. She said the pressure of living up to expectations left her no choice. Fighting back tears, she told reporters, quote, "I do not trust myself anymore." Athleta said in a statement after, quote, "We stand by Simone and support her well-being both in and out of competition. Being the best also means knowing how to take care of yourself." There was an instant outpouring of support for Biles on social media. Meanwhile, U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee CEO Sarah Hirshland celebrated Biles for her bravery, writing, quote, "We applaud your decision to prioritize your mental wellness over all else and offer you the full support and resources of our Team USA community as you navigate the journey ahead." The spokesman for the IOC said Wednesday that it had, quote, "huge respect and support for Biles and that more could be done for athletes' mental health." The U.S. women's gymnastics team went on to win the silver medal.
Coming up, Barbara Boxer describes the attack and mugging she suffered in Oakland Monday. The 80-year-old former senator explains what she thinks will stop the rising wave of crime in America's cities. And educating children at home has become a new trend, even as some schools resume in-person classes after the pandemic. Parents say they will continue homeschooling until the foreseeable future. Find out more in just a minute. Ed Buck, a prominent liberal activist and Democrat Party political donor, was convicted of causing the death of 2 men. Both men overdosed on methamphetamine in Buck's West Hollywood apartment over a 2-year period. A third man managed to escape to a nearby gas station when Buck refused to call an ambulance. He called 911, leading to Buck's arrest. Prosecutors say Buck engaged in a pattern of soliciting men to consume drugs and exploit them for sex. They allege Buck sought vulnerable men who were homeless or addicted to drugs so he could have power over them. Gamble Moore was 26 at the time of his death in Buck's apartment in 2017. His mother called Buck's conviction a victory. Former Senator Barbara Boxer explains what happened when she was assaulted and mugged in Oakland Monday. She says the country needs more tough love and community policing to break the rising wave of crime in U.S. cities. NTD's Don Ma has the story.
Former California Senator Barbara Boxer was attacked and mugged in Oakland Monday afternoon. She tells CNN that 2 young men carried out the attack.
The other fellow jumped out of the car and started to run toward me, and I started to run away. And he essentially, sort of at the same time, slammed me in the back, grabbed my phone because my hand obviously let go of the phone. My earphones fell on the ground.
Boxer says she was scared but not injured.
More than anything else, I was shaking. I've never been so surprised and it was so fast and I was just not ready.
Author Seth Barron wonders in a New York Post column if the attack on the long-term liberal senator will be a wake-up call on crime. He says crime skyrocketed after riots triggered by George Floyd's death last summer. Barron says Democrats unleashed chaos while demonizing the police who could contain it. This has led directly to a massive, historically unprecedented acceleration of violence in American cities. Boxer herself blames former President Trump for the rise in crime, saying crime rates skyrocketed under Trump. Boxer tells CNN her prescription for reducing crime. She says,
"We need to be very strong with tough love on our kids, real enforcement, and more community policing."
Police say they're looking for the 2 teenage boys who are suspected in a series of recent attacks. They haven't released a description of the suspects. Don Mott, NTD News.
A Georgia man accused of killing 8 people at spas was sentenced to life without parole. A prosecutor says investigators saw no evidence of racial bias. 22-year-old Robert Aaron Long was given 4 life sentences after pleading guilty to all charges in the first 4 shooting deaths. The judge accepted the plea deal that allowed him life in prison. The district attorney chose not to seek the death penalty. The investigation revealed that 2 of the victims were not Asian and 1 was male, and so he avoided hate crime penalties. Long said he committed the murders because he wanted to punish the people who enabled his sexual addiction. But he could still face the death penalty for the 4 other shooting deaths that occurred in an adjacent county. Schools are back, but students maybe not. That's because more parents are opting to homeschool their children even after the pandemic. They say it's beneficial for kids. Here are the details.
While the pandemic has proved largely disruptive for most families, a few parents say they found stay-at-home orders helpful in homeschooling their children. Some explain their children have special educational needs, with others seeking faith-based programs. Still more say they see shortcomings in their local schools. They opted for alternative education long-term, after many were thrown into a homeschooling trial run this year.
I know that a lot of the parents, actually I'm going to say 95% of the parents I have, they won't go back to traditional school after being here.
Nikki Warris is a former public school teacher. In March of 2020, unhappy with the public school system, she started homeschooling her 2 daughters. Later in October, she opened her private educational center in Boca Raton, Florida, known as Elite Tutoring Specialists. The unique facility offers homeschooling for students in groups, while also catering to their individual learning needs.
I want people to know that you can still homeschool and put your child on a curriculum that suits their needs, and still be able to do it and work your full-time job.
The facility is also designed to inspire creativity. While not doing online courses, students can draw, paint, learn an instrument, or anything else they're interested in. Warris says that students have progressed much quicker in the environment. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the rate of homeschooling rose to 11% by September 2020, double the figure from 6 months earlier.
Just ahead, ladies in Texas compete in a beauty pageant. The contestants reflect on aging, life, and what it means to thrive as women. California wildlife officials are moving millions of salmon to cooler waters. It's because their usual habitat is too hot and water levels are too low. Stay tuned to find out more.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
Peace comes from within. I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. The human body is the temple of God, and religion is the experience of God within yourself. Are you ready to discover the truth within yourself? Book an appointment now at divinelight.com.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security.
Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Women in Texas competed in a beauty pageant over the weekend for the coveted Miss Texas Senior America title. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
Kimberly Gady. Contestants in the Miss Texas Senior America pageant did not always embrace the aging process, but now, at 60 to 75 years old, they're determined to prove that getting older can be a blast. Winner Kimberly Gady took home this year's title.
I feel like senior women have a tendency to lose their voice. We get discounted a lot of times because we're older, we're not as vibrant, we're not as energetic, we can't dance, we can't sing as well because our muscles are atrophied. And I think that that's just a big misnomer with society.
After hitting the milestone of 60, the piano teacher and grandmother of 7 decided to make some changes. She started exercising for the first time, got married, and worked up the courage to return to a beauty pageant.
I didn't want to be 60 when I was 40. I thought it was a death sentence. But I am living my best life. I just got married at 61, and I can't believe how my life has changed.
But unlike the pageants of her youth, there was no swimsuit competition. Instead, contestants were judged on their unique talents and their philosophies for life. Joyce Brown is the previous winner of the Miss Texas Senior America pageant. At 59, the retired engineer dropped 50 pounds and enrolled in her first pageant. Brown has enjoyed her reign as Miss Texas Senior America, but she's ready to pass on the crown and pursue a new goal.
And so now in my 60s, I'm feeling better about myself than any other decade of my life. So I am loving being 60. And I think that you can flourish wherever you are, whether it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. It's all about your mental state and what you make of it.
Debbie Carroll Boyce is a retired elementary school principal and won the national pageant in 2011.
I love children because I used to be an elementary principal. And so I love just, showing them that, hey, your principal, your ex-principal, she can still dance and she can still sing a little.
Her best beauty advice? Stop caring what others think, eat healthily, and stay active. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Police in North Las Vegas rescued a baby from inside a hot car earlier this month while the caretaker was allegedly gambling at a casino, and it was caught on body camera video. A witness who parked next to the vehicle reported the baby inside the car at the Bighorn Casino. It's not clear how long the child was left unattended. Police noted the door to the vehicle was unlocked. In the footage, a police sergeant is seen giving water to the screaming baby in an attempt to cool him off. She said she poured water on the child and that the child didn't have air conditioning in the car. The baby was later taken to a local hospital to get checked out. 39-year-old Mitchell Hooks was arrested for the crime. Hooks faces charges of child abuse and leaving an unattended child in a vehicle. According to court records, Hooks posted bail on July 19th. He's set to be in court on August 31st. Fish on the West Coast are being moved by trucks to more suitable waters. Warm and low water levels are affecting the fish.
Hundreds of thousands of young salmon are dying in Northern California's Klamath River. Low water levels brought about by drought allows a parasite to thrive, and wildlife officials said the Sacramento River is facing a near complete loss of young Chinook salmon due to abnormally warm water. As a result, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has been trucking millions of salmon raised at hatcheries to the ocean each year.
In a normal year, we would have released these fish to the Klamath River in about May, June, and river conditions were not good. It was low oxygen, warm temperatures, low flow, and high pathogen loads.
On the Klamath River near the Oregon state line, wildlife officials decided not to release more than 1 million young Chinook salmon into the wild. They instead drove them to hatcheries that could host them until river conditions improve.
Coming up, a Chinese family split apart by the country's deadly flood. The wife looked for her missing husband for 6 days, only to find him in a funeral home. An excavator sent by Chinese officials smashed up villagers' cars. That's after they were spotted secretly destroying the local river dikes to discharge floodwaters. More soon on NTD News. A new report out that says North and South Korea are in talks to reopen a joint liaison office that Pyongyang demolished last year. South Korean government sources reportedly told Reuters the two powers are looking to hold a summit. The sources say no time frame or other details for the summit have been raised due to the pandemic. The two Koreas are technically still at war after their 1950-53 conflict ended in a ceasefire, but on Tuesday, they restored hotlines the North had severed in June last year. South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un have also been exchanging multiple letters since April, when they marked the third anniversary of their first summit. Inter-Korean talks could help restart the stalled negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington aimed at dismantling North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. Residents in China's Zhengzhou are commemorating those who drowned in the subway when the city flooded. One woman is in deep despair after finding her husband's body in a funeral home 6 days after the flood. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
The dead are not forgotten. On Monday, stacks of flowers were spotted near a subway station in Zhengzhou City, with memorial cards tucked inside the bouquets.
I am filled with grief.
They commemorate those that drowned inside the subway cars. Local students also left flowers there and bowed deeply to mourn the victims. A father said at the entrance, a sign beside his bicycle reads, "Daughter, Dad still wants to take you home." But on the same day, local authorities blocked the scene. Videos circulating online show authorities putting 6-foot-tall barricades around the flowers. Local residents were furious. They posted online, "What are you afraid of? What are you unwilling to admit? Don't you know why they died here?" We are not allowed to stay, to watch, to tell others, to discuss, to commemorate, and to express anger. They treat it as if it never happened. The barricades didn't stop local residents from mourning. Many put flowers and cards outside the barricades. A popular online post reads, "Had they blocked the flood on the day of the disaster, they wouldn't have to block people's flowers today." A local Chinese media reported that local residents are taking down the barricades. A wife's search for her missing husband in China has taken a tragic turn. Last Tuesday, Sha Tao became one of the train passengers trapped amid the rising floodwaters inside a subway car. His wife finally found him 6 days later, but by then she could no longer recognize him. Sha's wife posted online, lying in the freezer of the funeral home, labeled anonymous. He was no longer a handsome young man. "From now on, I no longer have a husband, my daughter no longer has a father, and our parents no longer have a son." Sha Tao had been on his way home from work last Tuesday when subway line 5 in the city of Zhengzhou flooded. That's when he went missing. Sha's wife posted messages and photos of him on Chinese social media, asking for help to look for him. She called local hospitals, but was told her husband wasn't on the list of those found injured or dead. Sha's wife explained online that first responders seem to make slow progress, writing, "Rescue work has been delayed over and over. Do you know how desperate I am? This is killing me. Time is life." On Monday, Chinese officials announced 2 more deaths from last Tuesday's flooded metro. Sha was among them. He was 34 years old. The official death toll has now reached 14. Sha's wife is questioning local authorities over the deadly metro disaster. She writes, flood prevention work was not done properly. Some subway lines had already been flooded, but Metro Line 5 was still operating. After finding water in the subway, passengers were not evacuated in time for more than an hour. Later, accidents were not reported in time, and follow-up searches and rescue work weren't properly done. Sha's sister also calling for justice, saying, "Brother, the world owes your life to our family. The world owes you. We will definitely get justice for you."
Villagers in central China's Henan province spent days and nights fortifying river embankments to prevent flooding, only to have the dikes destroyed by officials. The two sides are now clashing over it.
It was around 4 a.m. in the morning. Villagers in Henan Xinjiang were sound asleep. Then, Chinese authorities sent excavators there to secretly dig up the river dikes in the village in order to discharge floodwaters. The villagers on guard spotted them. The two sides then clashed violently. The excavators smashed up the villagers' cars near the river embankments. They were parked there to block the excavators from destroying the dikes. And again in another village in the same province.
The government went to our village and dug our river dikes up.
Residents there spent 2 days fortifying the local river dikes to prevent flooding.
The water level kept rising. The villagers were afraid the river embankments may not stop it, so they began to fortify the river embankments.
Local resident Wang Yan tells the Epoch Times about 500 villagers were guarding the river dikes day and night. To protect her identity, we gave her a pseudonym. Last Thursday night, officers and soldiers suddenly arrived in the village. They tried to dig up the river embankments local residents had fortified. The villagers were desperate.
Many villagers were trying to stop them, otherwise the village would be flooded. And the officers and soldiers that the authorities sent pepper sprayed the villagers' faces. The villagers fell to the ground, and finally they dug up the fortified river dikes.
Wang says the authorities sent about 500 soldiers there. And as a result, her village was flooded. Chinese officials are trying to block information about this village. Electricity and water are now cut off in the village amid the floods. Villagers there are pleading for help.
I am telling the truth, but it was censored online.
Another villager, Li Liang, says there are about 4,000 residents in the village, but no one dared to send out the videos they took when they clashed with the authorities.
As soon as they let the water out, let me tell you how fast that was. The water level in our river used to be about 9 feet, but now it may be about 70 feet.
Chinese media reported that in Xinjiang, the water level is above 5 feet and is still rising.
Still to come, Sydney, Australia adds 4 more weeks of lockdown while the government threatens stronger enforcement of rules. Find out what residents are saying about it. The first cruise ships are returning to the European country of Montenegro. It's bringing hope to the tourism industry as well as concern for the environment. We'll have more for you in just a moment.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
our back and forth, it always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
A Lebanese couple does not even have a photograph of their wedding day on display, as the memories are so painful. They got married on August 4th, 2020, the same day as the blast in Beirut.
August the 4th, 2020, was meant to be the wedding day that Lebanese doctor Isra Sablani had always dreamed of, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Isra was standing radiant in a square in Beirut that afternoon, after marrying businessman Ahmed Subeya, when the scene was shattered by a deafening roar and a powerful shockwave that nearly blew her off her feet. More than 200 people were killed by the blast in Beirut last August, and thousands more were injured. Swathes of the city were destroyed, including the hotel where they were due to spend their first night as newlyweds. The couple are so haunted by the memories of the blast that they do not have a photo of their wedding on display.
It's a memory that can't be forgotten. It's living with us, and we might be living with it until we die. This moment, for me or for her, doesn't leave our mind. It's correlated to us in our life, mind, brain, and soul, and it's staying with us. We are just coexisting with it, not more.
We don't even like to go back in memory to that time, especially me, to a point where until today, I still don't have a photo of my wedding day at home. I didn't put a photo of us up, and I can't, even though I received it as a gift.
As the first anniversary of the blast and their wedding approaches, the couple plan to keep themselves busy with work. She at the Rafik Hariri University Hospital, he at his clothing business. They soon hope to leave Lebanon to escape the economic crisis there. Ahmed says they just want stability and security. As for Isra, she hopes not to be reminded of the fact that her wedding day fell on one of the darkest days in her country's history.
Australia's biggest city, Sydney, extended a lockdown by 4 weeks today. That's after an already protracted stay-at-home order failed to douse a COVID-19 outbreak. Authorities are also warning of tougher policing to stamp out non-compliance.
The country's most populous state, New South Wales, reported 177 new cases for Tuesday. At least 46 of those new cases were people active in the community before being diagnosed, raising the likelihood of transmission. New South Wales State Premier Gladys Berejiklian warned of tougher policing to stamp out non-compliance and added that police would boost enforcement of wide-ranging social distancing rules. In Sydney's southwest, reactions to the lockdown extension were mixed.
It's all right, but it's a bit hard for everybody else, you know, and that, but Gladys is doing a good job. She is.
There's a lot of people out there that have lost their jobs and, paying off houses, paying off a lot of things, and to just, say, what, let's extend it a month. Like, cases are always going to be going up and down, but there's got to be other ways.
The extension turns what was initially intended to be a snap lockdown into one of the country's longest since the start of the pandemic, and may spark the second recession in 2 years, according to economists.
A Chaumet jewelry store close to the Champs-Élysées Avenue in central Paris was targeted by an armed robbery on Tuesday, and reports say almost $3 million worth of goods were stolen. Le Parisien newspaper said a man arrived at the store on a stand-up scooter and brandished a weapon inside during opening hours. Then he fled the scene on the two-wheeler. The prosecutor's office said it had opened an investigation. It did not confirm initial estimates of the loot. Chaumet is one of France's oldest jewelry brands. It's owned by luxury goods conglomerate LVM. It could not immediately be reached for comment. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says his dog Dylan gets romantic urges while talking with a police dog German Shepherd handler.
Do you have to worry about his romantic urges?
No, not so much. No. Not yet. No, we've not encountered that issue yet, have we?
No, why? My dog is endless. He's on people's legs.
The comment caused UK Interior Minister Priti Patel to chuckle. Johnson was out inspecting various kinds of police dogs. Johnson and his wife Carrie revealed in 2019 that they adopted a rescued Jack Russell mixed breed puppy named Dylan. Johnson got married earlier this year in a secret ceremony. The southeastern European country of Montenegro is awaiting the return of its first cruise ships after a 16-month wait. They're set to renew local tourism, but some say they also pose environmental concerns.
This is the Viking Venus, one of the first major cruise ships to reach the tiny Balkan country of Montenegro after 16 months. The vessel arrived in the medieval town of Kotor on Saturday morning, but fewer than 200 passengers were on board. That's a fraction of its usual capacity of over 900. What's more, passengers didn't flock to local shops and businesses like usual amid pandemic-driven restrictions.
The season is at 50% compared to 2019. Cruisers bring 99% of business to us. As you see, they're not coming. Today, the first one arrived, but there is nobody from it in the town.
Tourism accounts for more than 20% of Montenegro's economy. The country lost almost all of its standard revenue sources from the 2020 summer tourist season. Now the return of cruise ships brings hope to tourists and retailers, but not everyone is pleased. Some environmental activists say the country needs to set boundaries for cruise ships to protect the local ecosystem and heritage. An expert from NGO Green Home stressed the need to study the ship's environmental impact.
That can be done by limiting the time that a particular cruiser could spend in the bay, defining zones of the bay that are off limits for cruisers, and limiting the number of vessels at the same time.
Cruise ship passengers seemed happy to get back on board after the pandemic break. Some described the advantages to reduced occupancy on board.
It's empty on the ship, there's more staff than passengers. So it's good for us because at least, there's a free sunbed every time.
In a recent interview with Reuters, the country's economy minister said tourism activity was getting back to around 80% of 2019 levels, with a full recovery expected by the end of 2022.
Up next, a 19-year-old girl is challenging a world aviation record, the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. She hopes to pave the way for other girls in STEM fields. Older Japanese recall Japan's 1964 Olympics as virus lockdown measures keep them from enjoying this year's games in the same way. Find out more here on NTD News. A 19-year-old woman is paving the way for girls by setting an aviation record, the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. Her journey takes off next month. Let's take a look.
This is a custom-built Shark Ultralight, the world's fastest microlight aircraft. With it, Zara Rutherford will embark on her 32,000-mile journey on August 11th. The 19-year-old girl aims to snag a world aviation record.
So growing up, I didn't really see many female pilots or female computer scientists. Those are two of my passions, and it's quite discouraging when there's no one that can relate to you that does any of those things. So then I wanted to fly around the world, hopefully have other girls see me and think I'd love to fly one day too.
Rutherford hopes to pave the way for girls and women in STEM, that is, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Once complete, she'll be both the youngest person to fly a microlight and the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. The current record is held by an American female pilot who completed the journey at age 30. Rutherford says her goal is to inspire others to follow in her footsteps. Both her parents are also pilots. But when their daughter announced her plans for a gap year, her mother voiced mixed feelings.
When she first told me about it, my heart skipped a beat. It took me a bit of time to digest, and now I'm so proud and fully behind her.
The teenager is funding the trip herself with help from sponsors. She'll complete her journey in 2 to 3 months. In
Tokyo, Japan, the Olympics are unfolding very differently than planned. With the city's fourth lockdown forcing potential spectators to stay home, some recount their experiences from the last time Tokyo hosted the Games.
Born 1 year after the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, Seiichi Kuroki knew little about his father's time at the Games. His father, Masatoshi, is now 85 years old. A retired banker and former member of Japan's self-defense force, he didn't talk much about his work with his family. But when Seiichi won tickets to the 2020 Olympics, his father happily shared his legacy. Not only was he present for the opening ceremony, he marshaled it, arranging the other soldiers in the celebration. Adding to that, he appeared in a documentary about the Games.
This Olympics has given me the opportunity to discover many things about Dad for the first time, and I am very grateful for that.
Seiichi, a baseball coach himself, was excited to attend this year's Games, but Tokyo's fourth lockdown due to the pandemic had other plans. The virus is known to affect the elderly more than any other group, making it particularly dangerous in Japan, which has the most senior population of any country in the world.
Considering the Olympics being the top of sports, I was looking forward to it from the bottom of my heart.
Now, with his father safe and sound, Seiichi is focused on future generations, like the boys he coaches. He says he'd like to see them become lifelong players and maybe even Olympians themselves.
That is because sports can potentially be a communication tool, which could help them further down the road.
Setsuko Watanabe is another of Japan's senior citizens present at the 1964 Olympics. She now owns the building that she watched the opening ceremonies in at that time.
Back then, I was a junior high school student, and there was a lottery at school that those who won could go see the games. I was the last one to pick the lottery as my family name, Watanabe, was at the very end of the Japanese alphabetical order. But surprisingly, I won, so I went to see athletics.
Watanabe says she won't be able to see the flame being lit this year due to the design of the stadium. But she hopes to witness the 5 rings formed in the sky by the Air Force's Blue Impulse Squadron.
From here, I could clearly see the stairs leading up to the flame and the torch bearer going up the stairs and lighting the flame.
Tokyo's $1.4 billion stadium was constructed with wood from Japan's 47 prefectures. It sits mostly empty for this Olympics. Its 60,000 seats occupied only by the world's journalists, who aren't allowed to cheer or chant.
There are important differences between a walk around your neighborhood and a hike in nature. Let's explore on this segment of Strong Mind and Body.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. The popularity of hiking has climbed during the pandemic. Hiking is a great way to experience nature. It also offers those who do it several mental and health benefits. Hiking differs in many ways from taking a regular stroll around your neighborhood. Unlike the sidewalk, the terrain on many hiking routes is uneven. There's usually a change in elevation as the trail winds up or down hills. People also tend to wear different footwear, such as hiking boots, which can be heavier than what they're used to wearing. These differences in terrain and footwear mean that hiking has a higher energy expenditure and more calories burned. We also need to use additional muscles to stabilize ourselves on uneven terrain. These muscles are normally unused when walking on flat, even ground. Brisk walking uses up to 4 times as much energy as sitting down and resting. Hiking through fields and hills uses more than 5 times that energy. This means you can achieve the recommended 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. You don't even have to go for a run or head to the gym. The benefits of getting enough exercise are clear. It improves physical health, sleep quality, and stress management. It also reduces your chances of developing certain chronic diseases such as dementia, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, depression, and certain cancers. In older adults, some research suggests hiking may be able to improve hypertension. Hiking is also beneficial for those with pre-existing health conditions. Research shows hiking leads to weight loss. It also improves cardiovascular health in pre-diabetic adults, likely reducing their risk of getting type 2 diabetes. It's also been shown to improve other aspects of health, including muscle strength, balance, and flexibility in older adults with obesity. Those who suffer from balance issues or joint problems can use trekking poles to reduce the load on the legs. A further health benefit of hiking is that it's classified as green exercise. This refers to the added health benefit that doing physical activity in nature has on us. Research shows that green exercise decreases blood pressure, boosts mental well-being by improving mood, and reduces depression to a greater extent than exercising indoors can. This research suggests healthcare professionals should recommend hiking to patients as a low-cost way of improving health when possible. Hiking is also a great way to get active and improve mental and physical well-being. And with many of us likely to be vacationing locally this year, it can be a great way to get away from home and explore new sites.
Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.